Hi, everyone, and welcome to God's Plan, Your Part, a podcast where our goal is to read the entire Bible in a year, seeking to understand God's plan of redemption while discovering daily and practically your part in it.
Poor Paul. Or maybe we shouldn't say poor Paul. I definitely have this sad feeling about Paul as we're reading through these chapters today. He seems like this underdog story that's going to see some kind of breakthrough. And it seems like the hole just keeps getting dug further and further for him. So today we are reading out of Acts chapters 24, 25, and 26. And it's a really strange turn of events where, like I said, it feels like he should really start hitting his stride with going in a positive direction. And it seems that he, maybe spoke a little too soon.
All right, so we're picking up the story of Paul. We're getting closer and closer to the end of the story of Paul, though we are not at the total end. In chapter 24, we're picking up kind of this trial that erupted because Paul just tried to go to the temple and people went nuts. These Jews from Asia recognized him. They were like, that's the guy. They arrested him. They beat him. He appeals to Caesar. What's really interesting is that he is in the custody of Felix. Felix is apparently somewhat gracious to Paul, but Felix keeps Paul in loose confinement, I guess, some kind of imprisonment for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And it's not like the story progresses at all. There's just this little line. It's chapter 24, verse 27. When 2 years had elapsed, Felix was succeeded by Porcius Festus. So he's in house arrest or something for 2 years. And then Festus comes in and is like, we got to figure out something to do with this guy.
Also, I don't like that name. Festus seems really awkward. It's like that guy from the Addams Family, so I don't like him automatically. But this guy that kind of takes over, we've seen this before, even in the Old Testament. As soon as new leadership comes along, it seems like people kind of forget the significance, or maybe don't appreciate the original victim, like we saw with Joseph. Joseph back in the day was well known to the Egyptians as being this awesome, fantastic person. As the years progressed, people kind of forgot his significance and then ended up putting the Israelites into slavery. What's interesting here is that it seems like there might be kind of a chance that with Felix, there might be some good vibes going on for Paul, and then this custody switches over. I mean, he's basically under house arrest for 2 whole years. I feel like that means there's no definitive answer that this guy is truly in the wrong. But then we get handed over to Festus, and it seems to me that he's not feeling Paul's vibe. He's not into it. He's like, you know what, this guy, I'm not sure of him. We need to really talk to him further because I think he's crazy.
We also noticed that the hatred for Paul continued throughout those years. It did not subside. If you look at chapter 25, it's verse 3. They were planning an ambush to kill him along the way. So Festus decides to okay, we need to take this seriously. We got to figure out what to do with this guy. They start to move him around in custody, and the Jewish leaders, I guess, are still under that oath that they got to kill Paul.
It also says in verse 9, too, Festus says, it says about Festus, wishing to do the Jews a favor. So he already is not in Paul's corner at all whatsoever. He knows the Jews' frustration, and he kind of gives them a little bit of attitude. And he's like, do you wish to go to Jerusalem and be tried there for these charges before me? Do you want me to take you there where they hate you even more? Kind of showing his authority and not showing his support of Paul in any way.
It's worth noting, the delicate dance. This is maybe history nerd kind of stuff, but the delicate dance that's happening in politics in the first century, in Judea, around Jerusalem. The Jews were known to be kind of violent at times.
Kind of.
And the Romans were just trying to build their empire and promote peace. So there's this delicate dance of Jewish leadership and Roman leadership. That's why you'll see that a lot of these Roman leaders are trying to appease the Jewish people because they want to keep peace in the region. Mm-hmm. And when there's not peace in the region, usually the person who is the governor or the leader, the Roman leader, they usually pay for it. And so you'll even notice, like with Pontius Pilate and Jesus, like Pontius Pilate is very aware of what the Jews are doing, how he should handle them. He does not want riots in the streets. He wants to bring peace in the area. Apparently Felix was also doing that, and now Festus is also doing that. That's why Festus brings in Agrippa. Agrippa is one of the Herods, and he's one of the Jewish leaders that reports to the Roman leaders to try to keep peace in the region.
So I think what's interesting about this, and we've seen this pattern repeated, the Jews are very aware of this delicate kind of dance that you're talking about. And because of that, if somebody is ever out of line with what they're saying, there's always this idea of, well, let's just riot and get this going crazy and be like, that's the guy that's causing all of this. And so Paul is in this really awkward situation where he kind of, like we were talking about the other day, he kind of knows the ins and outs of this as well. So in chapter 25, I think, in my opinion, this is like a little bit of his humanity showing, or maybe God's sovereignty. Who knows? Depends on how you want to look at it. But I think he is a little hasty and says, well, I'm going to appeal to Caesar. And it's like, oh, man. Because once we get to the end of chapter 26, it's very clear that whoever was in charge of him next, Agrippa, is like, well, shoot.
This guy didn't do anything wrong.
He didn't do anything wrong, and we would have just let him go. Now he has to go against Caesar, or go to Caesar, which is so frustrating. It's like, oh, man, Paul, why didn't you just shut up? And just like...
Well, I mean, we can all be very thankful that Paul did not just shut up. We have many...
I just feel bad for him the whole time. I'm like, yes, he's going to get out. No, he's not going to get out. And we already know the end of the story, but it's just like, oh, wait, what?
So Paul has not yet written Colossians. He has not yet written Ephesians. He has not yet written Philippians. He has not yet written Timothy. He has not yet written Titus.
Yeah.
There's some debate over if he wrote Hebrews or not. But like basically there's like there's we can get into that I guess when we get to Hebrews. But there's
like rocking my world over here.
There's a full library of things that Paul has not yet done, and he does those things while imprisoned, while reaching out to the Gentiles on his way to Rome. So there's a lot of Paul's life left. What Paul does, though, man, is probably the thing that sticks out to me from the reading. Paul is like, this is a legal proceeding. Don't forget that. So like it wouldn't have looked like this, but have in your mind, like modern day, like this is a trial in a courtroom. Like obviously first century, that looks slightly different, but Paul uses this opportunity to witness to the judge. That's what he's doing.
Yeah. And all the people that are hearing him too.
So like his life is at stake. Okay. Like imprisonment is on the table. He's already been like lightly imprisoned for 2 years. And he's given like everything has been leading up to this speech where he can make his defense, where he could be freed, and he chooses not to make a defense and instead to preach the gospel. And Agrippa catches on and is like, do you think you'll persuade me to be like, are you serious right now? You're trying to make me a Christian? Now at the same time, Paul's like, I haven't done anything wrong. Like I've followed your laws. I was doing what I was supposed to do. But he testifies to the power of Christ in his life. This is like probably the third time we've seen this written down where Paul is just recounting the fact that Jesus appeared to him. Now, if Paul made this up, why would he, every time he comes under scrutiny, why would he talk about Jesus changing his life? So how bold of Paul to preach the gospel. I mean, to me, there's no question that this dude is so passionate about serving Jesus. He does not care about anything but Christ. And so Agrippa and I guess like also Festus are preached the gospel to.
What's interesting too in verse 29, kind of going back to what you were saying, it says, and Paul said, whether short or long, okay, basically saying, would you try to persuade me to be a Christian in this like small amount of time? He says, well, whether short or long, I would to God that not only you, but also all who hear me this day might become such as I, except for these chains. I think that's hilarious because it has like physical implications, but it's also like like read between the lines too. Like your chains of sin are no longer. It's so interesting. So he is just like, I don't know, soaking up every moment that he has. So what I think we can really pull from this today is a pretty cool your part that regardless of circumstances, regardless of how you feel or the tribulation that is within your life, there is no situation where we cannot reflect God and like preach his gospel to those around us. Paul was literally being accused in front of a court that was ready to kill him by people who were ready to just like put him to death on the spot. And he still put those things aside and spoke the gospel to these people who so clearly needed it. So there is no situation outside of God's sovereignty and God's power to be able to speak into the lives of other people around you. So take that as like a little nudge of encouragement today, whatever situation you find yourself in, to share God's word with the people around you. So thanks for joining us today. We'll be back again tomorrow.
Thanks so much for listening to God's Plan, Your Part. If anything stuck out to you, if you have any questions, or if you'd like to receive a Bible, you can email us at godsplanyourpart@gmail.com. Also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please consider supporting us through the link in our description. We love that you're on this journey with us, and we hope you have a great day. See you tomorrow.